The rules have changed on shooting astrophotography. And today I'm going to share with you a brand new workflow that has completely changed the way I shoot the Milky Way. And if you follow this new workflow and these steps that I'm about to share with you, you'll have more crisp, clean shots of the Milky Way than you ever thought possible. So grab your phone and a notepad and let's get ready. This stuff is absolutely going to blow you away. Okay, who doesn't love astrophotography? Just being in a dark spot and watching the Milky Way come up over the horizon into view is an experience unto itself. But gather up a few extra photographers and share in the experience of shooting the Milky Way, and it's an experience you just can't beat. Welcome back, guys, and I'm so good to be back in the saddle again. I took about a week and a half off because I was doing a photo workshop out in Moab with Hudson Henry. More on that in just a minute. But if you love to learn photography, or if you're interested in learning more about astrophotography, then please consider subscribing to my channel and sharing it with your friends. I'll take you on my journeys as I'm learning, and I'll share in the experience with you. Now, talking about workshops. I just got back from an epic 5-day workshop with Hudson Henry out in Moab, Utah. And the thing I love about workshops is you get to rub shoulders with other photographers and other professionals, and then you might even be able to help some people that are sort of just getting started and share with what you've already learned with them so that everybody kind of learns together. Then you also have that added benefit of being in a really cool place, seeing some new locations, and then doing the critiques together where you actually put up your work and other photographers can kind of give you feedback on that. I've learned from my students in the classroom probably more than they even learn from me, or at least having an open critique gives everybody a perfect opportunity to learn from each other, and you just can't get that when you're out shooting by yourself. So I highly recommend scheduling yourself a workshop from a photographer that you follow, someone you really resonate with, and especially if they're doing a workshop in an area of the world where you just kind of want to go. For me, that was Moab. I love the desert, and I've always wanted to go to Arches National Park. So this was an opportunity. As soon as I saw Hudson Henry post that he was doing a workshop in Moab, I was probably one of the first ones to sign up. Now, a couple nights during the workshop I did with Hudson Henry, we went out and we actually shot astrophotography. Well, it was after that first night of doing astrophotography, during one of the critique sessions where we're really looking at photos, that some of these points of discussion came up on astrophotography and how things have changed. See, always before, you basically had this set of rules using like the 500 rule, which said, you know, you put your ISO on 3200 and you do about a 30-second exposure and you should be good to go. But under further review, especially with these new cameras, the new DSLRs and the new mirrorless cameras with higher megapixels, the thing is you don't see these crisp little dots for stars. Instead, you see little dashes. And I have noticed that in a lot of my shots from this past summer. Shots that I've taken in Broken Bow. Shots that I've taken out at my farm. When I'm using a shutter speed of about 25 seconds, I'm not seeing those little crisp dots, but I'm seeing dashes. And the reason is the megapixel count on the cameras has gotten crazy. We're talking upwards of 24, 46, 60 megapixels now on the new Sonys, the A7R4. It's just ridiculous. And because of this higher megapixel count, we have to have some new rules for astrophotography. Now, you may remember I did a tutorial on astrophotography a few months ago, and I did talk about the 500 rule and the NFP rule. Well, now I'm basically saying, unless you're using like a low megapixel camera south of 20 megapixels, just scrap the 500 rule altogether. Just leave it in the dust. Go completely with the NFP rule. But we'll talk a little bit more about that in a second. First, let's brush up on a little bit of prep work on shooting astrophotography. Now, I'll post a link to my new revised cheat sheet on astrophotography with this new information, but one thing hasn't changed, and that's how you plan to do your astrophotography. You still need to have an idea of what you're doing when you go out in the field. And just like I've said before, I always use photo pills because you can hold up your phone and turn on augmented reality, and you can actually scan the horizon and see exactly where the Milky Way is going to be in relationship to your subject. So you cannot just guess at where the Milky Way is going to be. Use photo pills, get to your location early, and plan for where that Milky Way is going to be. Now, right now it's October, and the Milky Way continues to get lower and lower on that south horizon, so the galactic core isn't going to be visible for a whole lot longer. So I'm trying to get this video out for you, those people who want to use this new workflow to shoot one last hurrah this summer or fall before the Milky Way basically goes down on the southern horizon. So we were up at Delicate Arch, and this is something I cannot stress to you that was just so cool, is we got there super early at Delicate Arch, and of course we watched the sunset, and there was a ton of people taking pictures of the sunset. But after the sun went down, most people left because they didn't have flashlights or headlamps, and they wanted to go down safely back to their cars. And Delicate Arch is in this huge sort of bowl-shaped, kind of almost like a canyon, but it sits right on the edge of this cliff. And as I was taking my tripod and looking for where I wanted to set up, I noticed there was a ton of photographers who had set up on the ledges around Delicate Arch. But I took photo pills, launched augmented reality, and I started looking for where the Milky Way is going to be. And I kind of had this vision. I wanted to have Delicate Arch with the Milky Way coming down through and the core being visible through the arch. And I'm looking at Delicate Arch, and I'm taking my phone and I'm kind of positioning where the Milky Way is going to be at a certain time of the night. And I noticed that I have to be pretty close to Delicate Arch in order to see that happen. Well, all these other photographers are around behind me, and I kind of feel like I'm about to encroach in their shot. So really, I kind of took a chance, and I just sort of showed my cards to everybody, and I said, hey guys, I've got photo pills launched, and if you guys are trying to get the Milky Way through Delicate Arch, according to photo pills, not me, but I'm saying the app here, according to photo pills, if you're down here, you can see the galactic core of the Milky Way in Delicate Arch. And it was unbelievable. Within just a few seconds, there was this stampede of photographers with tripods setting up around me because I had information they didn't have. And they were so thankful that I shared that with them. So that accomplished two things. It helped them, and it also kind of gave me permission to be way up front in front of everybody so that I could actually get the shot that I wanted anyway. So that's a little note to just communicating with other photographers, and it can be a lot of fun when you're sharing your position and things you find with other photogs. Don't be selfish. If you see something, just communicate it, because they're going to take it differently anyway. You don't have to be selfish about finding that awesome spot. And other photographers were equally generous with me when they found something. So it was just a really cool experience. Now, setting up early actually fits in perfectly with my preferred way of shooting the Milky Way. See, what I like to do is to shoot the whole landscape in blue hour in sort of the afterglow of the sunset, because I like to do composites later where I'll have this super dark Milky Way sky, but I'll bring in that blue hour shot of Delicate Arch or Balanced Rock or something that I'm using in the foreground with light in the scene so that you can see the foliage in front of you, rocks in the foreground, you can see the main subject that you're after, and you can even get a little bit of definition in those distant hills underneath that star-swept sky. Now, a lot of photographers like to light paint using a flashlight or one of those little LED panels, and that's great, that's totally fine. But I at least like to have all the ingredients possible so that if I'm wanting to composite something, I'll have that in post. So it's super crucial that you know exactly where that Milky Way is going to be. So if you're going to do a composite, you've got your camera locked down and you've got that blue hour shot of Delicate Arch or some bridge or building or tree, and then you know exactly where the Milky Way is going to be, so you don't have to risk moving your camera and ruining that composition later if the Milky Way happens to be in a different position. So getting there early and knowing where the Milky Way is going to be is absolutely crucial, especially if you're doing a pano or if you're doing a composite. Now Hudson Henry had a pretty cool plan of taking a little LED panel that he had and putting the power down to like 5% and shining up a constant light source on these rocks so that everybody had a consistent light source. There was something there. Instead of just being a silhouette of a rock against the Milky Way, you would actually have some definition. And that was completely fine with me, because either way, if I used my composite or if I used his lighting source in my ultimate final shot, I would have either one of those to choose from, and both of them look pretty amazing. Okay, so here's a rundown on the new workflow for astrophotography. And if you have a higher megapixel camera north of 20 megapixels, you absolutely must adhere to these rules. You've got to use the NFP rule. Now in photo pills, this is very, very easy. I plugged in the Nikon Z6 with my 14 to 30 lens, and I'm assuming I'm going to be at 14, as wide as I can go. It only goes down to f4, so I plug that in. And what do I get? It tells me I need to have a 10-second exposure. And for somebody who's done a little bit of astrophotography, this just sounded ridiculous. 10 seconds? That means I'm gonna have to crank the ISO up ridiculous in order to have a balanced exposure. And what's that gonna do? You guessed it, it's gonna create noise. And typically I would be like resistant to that, like no, I can't do, you know, upwards of 5,000, because I know where my camera breaks, especially the Z7. The Z6 is a little bit cleaner in low light, but the Z7 is going to really start to suffer at 5,000 ISO. Especially I have to go up to 6,500 in order to get that exposure right. But here's the deal. With new software, and Hudson Henry actually told me about this one, Starry Landscape Stacker is a software that you can download. And what it enables you to do is to take multiple shots, like take 10 shots of the exact same position. And then it will stack those up and average out what's moving and what's not moving, and it will know what is a star versus what's noise. So you can actually relax that sort of urge to fight that ISO and just go ahead with a little bit higher ISO, actually a lot higher ISO, and just not worry about the noise. And on my camera, on the Z6, I just turned on the interval timer so that it would shoot 10 shots back to back without me having to touch the camera. And that's important because during astrophotography, especially if you're shooting a set, you don't want to accidentally bump the camera and move it, because you want every possibility of having that camera still and locked off. Another cool thing about this new workflow is that you're shooting shorter shutter speeds. With a 10-second shot, you're not sitting here waiting on these long 30-second, 25-second, 30-second shots. You can shoot 10 pretty quickly. In 100 seconds, you've got 10 shots. So just remember, if you're shooting a pano, whether that be vertical or horizontal, every time that you move the camera, make sure you repeat that interval, repeat that process, and shoot 10 shots in each position so that you'll have all the ingredients you need to be able to clean those up in post-processing. So right now I'm going to transition to the Starry Landscape Stacker app, and I want to show you a little bit about how this works. Okay, so the first thing I'm going to do in Starry Landscape Stacker is adjust the dots in the sky so that it has more reference points. I'm going to click on some of these brighter stars that maybe it didn't pick up automatically, give it a few more points of reference. So I'm adding dots here, and then I want to make sure that I remove any dots that it accidentally put on balanced rock here, because that's not sky. It just found some highlights on that, and I want to make sure that they're not included in the sky. There's a few down here too. I want to get rid of those. Okay, then we can go find sky, and it will create a mask on just where the stars are located. And we want to paint the rest of that in with blue, the parts that it missed. I probably should have grabbed some more red dots higher up, but that's okay. We'll go ahead and mask this out really quickly. And I think part of that's the ground. I'll erase what I think is the ground. Let's see, where does that, okay, that's the sky still. There's a little bit of light pollution back there. And then let me quickly undo. Let me quickly erase what I did down here. I messed that up just a little bit on that rock. Okay, that's good. We're just going to do a quick one here just for reference. Okay, so once you're finished making your mask, now you can align and composite, and it's referencing the other images on either side of image number 5 so that it can align and stack up the stars and erase the noise. And wow, look at that. That made a really, really nice clean image. So what I did is I took every single position. I did a vertical pano here, and I took every single position and brought it into Starry Landscape Stacker and then exported that composite shot. So if we go here and we save this, this is how I created that composite. I did this for every single image in that pano. So ultimately, let me go back to Photoshop and I'll show you what happened. And the cool thing is, when you take the photos from Starry Landscape Stacker and you bring them back into Lightroom and do a little bit more adjusting, it will stitch those things like a champ because it's removed all that noise and you've got these hard points that are really crisp and sharp, and Lightroom's like, okay, I know what we're doing here, and it will just stitch your Starry pano like a champ. I have never seen Lightroom stitch a pano of the Milky Way any faster than what it did with these composites that I brought in from Starry Landscape Stacker. It's absolutely amazing. So looking here at what I have in Photoshop, this was my sort of blue hour afterglow shot. And I love this of balanced rock because I've got the dirt, I've got these plants with a little bit of contrast, not a lot, but I can see just that enough glow on those rocks that I've got definition way over here. And if I darken that down and crush it, I can still keep a lot of detail. So I just basically made a duplicate of that layer and crushed it down so that I could separate the sky out of it. And then I made a selection, and then I extended the canvas on this shot. And then ultimately, let me minimize those. What I ended up with was this over here. And you can actually see my composite here. So this is what the landscape looked like with the little LED panels that Hudson and I placed. I put the one on the left hand side over here, and Hudson put one on balanced rock, and it was at literally 5%. You could hardly even see that glow. But what I didn't like about this is that I didn't get any detail in the foreground. But because I knew exactly where the Milky Way was going to be, I had my camera locked off. I literally have this composite that I can use in Photoshop, and I just absolutely love this because now in post-processing I have the flexibility to use what was actually lit by light painting, or I have the one that was lit by God just before the sun completely went away, and I have all of this amazing glow. But let me just punch in here. I want you to see at 100% how clean and how crisp this image really looks. If I move around here, you can see that it's just canceled out all the noise, and it's given me just incredible shadow contrast in between the stars. Like now I can see even those tiny little dots that we know are stars, distant stars, and that's always been the problem in the past of knowing what is a star versus what is a grain of noise. See, when you put this in Starry Landscape Stacker, it will average out, and if one dot is on and off, and then off, and then it's back on, then it's off again, then it'll know that wasn't really a star. But if there's the tiniest faint little dot and it stays consistent, then we know it gets to stay. It gets to live in that final composition because it's truly and incredibly a star. And that's what I love about this new workflow. Okay, to recap this new workflow, you're going to use the NFP rule when you shoot astrophotography. You're going to forget everything about the 500 rule and just go with NFP because you want no star trails unless you're actually going for star trails. You want crisp stars as dots, not dashes. Download PhotoPills on your phone and use it to plan where the Milky Way is going to be so there's no guesswork. Shoot 10 shots of every single position of your Milky Way, and just remember to make sure that you get your focus nailed. Infinity. Check it, review your shots, and make sure that you're on infinity. And then download Starry Landscape Stacker on your computer so that you can then get rid of all that noise from stacking those photos and averaging out those noise in post-production. And last but not least, remember to download my astrophotography cheat sheet. You can use it as a little reference to go through all the things that I've just shared with you. If you need to kind of brush up on the NFP rule, or if you want to remember these steps, I've got them all laid out in my cheat sheet. So download that in the description. Now, one thing I would love to share with you is an experience that I had on Delicate Arch. For a moment, Hudson Henry was up underneath the arch, and he had taken his LED panel and he had to lay flat of his back to stay out of all the photographer's view, and he would just open up his coat and shine light up into the arch for a couple seconds, and then he would close his coat and he would wait on everybody's shot to finish, and then I would yell 3, 2, 1 light again, and he would open up his jacket again. But as he was laying there, it was kind of a peaceful moment of just being under the arch looking up at the stars. And he came up to me, he's like, Jason, man, it was really cool laying there. You've got to go up under Delicate Arch and just lay there and look up at the Milky Way. And of course I took his advice and I did that. And for me, that's really when God showed up in a major way. And the thought that I got was that God has made and hung all of these stars in the sky, and he knows them by name. We know this from the Bible. And as I'm laying there, I'm thinking to myself, wow, there is light entering my retina right now that has been destined to enter my pupils since millennia before I was born. And God knew at this moment that I would be here with him underneath Delicate Arch, looking at this amazing artwork. There's no reason that Delicate Arch should even exist, apart from it just being artistic expression, and we know whose hands created that. And just to lay under that arch and look at those stars and that sky was absolutely a memory that I want you to put on your bucket list. If you ever have a chance, go up to Arches National Park during a new moon on a clear night and lay under Delicate Arch. If you ever doubt the hand of God and what he's created, you'll discover it there. And I hope this video has been valuable to you. I hope you've learned something from this. If you have gotten some value from this video, please consider subscribing to my channel and share this video with your friends. Remember to give it that little thumbs up and like my video. And if you have any questions about astrophotography or photography in general, I love getting feedback. Please leave your questions and comments in the comments below, and I'll get to those. And I hope you all have an amazing week, and I hope you get out on the very next opportunity and shoot astrophotography using these new rules. I promise you, you will be blown away with the results you get. You'll be far surpassing the way you were shooting astrophotography before. So until next time, may we all get out there and explore God's creation with childlike wonder, and I wish you the absolute best of luck with your astrophotography. See you next week. And if you just haven't had enough of me this week, here come links to 2 more videos. Thanks, guys.